One of the things that people ask me most are for the best beginner hikes here in North Japan. When people first come to Japan, of course they're most interested in the food, which is to die for, the culture, the stunning architecture, all these things that really come to mind when you say Japan. But I think even on a first trip, it also makes sense to explore the natural landscapes. After all, it was this landscape, the mountains that cover the archipelago, all of the active volcanoes, the rocky cliffs along the coasts. This is what shaped Japanese culture and made modern-day Japan what it is. The constant earthquakes, the tsunami resulting from them, typhoons, all of these disasters. Japan really is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. These really drive home some of those Buddhist lessons about impermanence and suffering. And I think without this natural environment, Japan and Japanese culture would have never become what they were in the medieval era and what they are today. So many of the concepts that people love to quote about Japanese culture, like wabi-sabi, come from the people that have had to adapt to these constant beatings they've been taking from Mother Nature. And so getting a taste of it by coming out to the mountains, to the coast, climbing up a volcano is, I think, perfect even for a first trip to Japan. Both of the hikes that I want to introduce today are in the Towada Hachimantai National Park, one of the larger national parks in Japan that spans 3 prefectures, Aomori, Akita, and Iwate. The first of these hikes, and the most casual, I would say, is Mount Hachimantai. Not only is there bus access to the trailhead, but you can also go in your normal street clothes. You don't need any special hiking boots or things like that. It makes sense to have a jacket or a windbreaker because it is a lot cooler up there than it is in town, but you can pretty much go with casual clothing to the Hachimantai area. For example, I went up to Hachimantai yesterday to get some drone footage, though it was pretty cloudy, and it was about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, around 32-ish Celsius in Morioka. But by the time I got up to the parking lot on Hachimantai near the trailhead, it was all the way down to a little over 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. That's how big the temperature difference is between Hachimantai and the cities in the valley below. The summit of Hachimantai area is largely an alpine marshland. There are a number of small lakes on the top. There's even some carnivorous plants that you can see if you can recognize them, and lots of beautiful flowers. It's beautiful during all seasons. I said you don't need any special clothing, but that's for the summer and the fall. During the spring, it's still covered in snow, and so you'll have to either use boots or there's a place up on top where you can rent simple boots and even snowshoes as well, because it's still under deep snow early in the spring. So at the top of Hachimantai, there's a trail that goes up and you can do loops around the various lakes up there, which is perfect. Take you an hour, you can have a picnic up there, whatever you like. And there's not much of an ascent. There's no steep slopes or anything like that, so it's really comfortable and easy. If you want, you can go up a little mountain called Mokko, which is just about 1 kilometer away. So you would go down the Jukai line to find the trailhead to that, and then it's just a 1 kilometer hike up Mokko dake. And you can have some really stunning views from there. Of course, the entire area is only accessible from mid-April through mid-November. Because of the snow, they just close the roads and you can't even get up there during the winter and really early spring season. That is Hachimantai, which is perfect for anyone of any level, and if you're coming through the area, it would be sad to miss it. It's really a nice place to just take a stroll, especially on a hot day. The second hike that I want to recommend is where I am today. This hike has 2 ways to access it, depending on how much exercise you want to get, really. There is a place called Alpa Komakusa, which is a hot springs and sort of a little facility. It's a bus stop as well near Lake Tazawa in Akita. And there's links for how to get up to there and things like that in the description. And from there, During the normal hiking season, you can take a bus up to the 8th Station Lodge there. And from there, you can just walk around. There's a whole bunch of different trails. I do recommend making sure you have a map in advance, which you can download from the internet or put on your smartphone. There's a number of apps. I recommend Yamap, Y-A-M-A-P. That one has great maps, which you can download in advance and use to walk around. Because there are a number of junctions, you could conceivably get lost if you didn't know which way to go at all and you didn't have any map. So you want to make sure you know which way to go. If you do have a map, it's not confusing at all and there's very little risk of getting lost. If you're a beginner at hiking but you want to try a hike and you want to get some exercise, then what I recommend is going with a guide, wink wink, to Kunimi Hot Springs on the Iwate side of the mountain. Kunimi Hot Springs is actually really interesting too because it is one of the few hot springs that allows people to bring their pets. And it is specifically famous for healing skin conditions in dogs. So they have a separate bath that's just for your dog, cat, ferret, whatever. Starting from Kunimi Hot Springs, the first 45 minutes-ish of the hike is just a pretty normal ascent up to the rim of an ancient caldera. And I've made a lot of videos of this mountain. It's one of my favorite, and so I will make a playlist, and I'll link to a playlist of all the various videos where I've done this hike so you can see what it's like. Why this is such a great hike is that even though it's not too strenuous, don't get me wrong, you'll sweat. You'll get some exercise, but it's not too hard and you really feel like you've entered another world. There are active volcanoes that are still smoking, enormous craters from the volcanoes that erupted in prehistoric times. You can go across old lava fields. There's a number of little summits. It's really diverse in the landscape, and you could go and make it as challenging as you want. You could try and touch all of the major summits here: Meidake, Odake, Yokodake, Yakimori, and Onamedake. That's the 5 sort of main summits you can go to. You can go to all those, or you could go to just 1 or 2, or just walk in between and not bother with any of them, depending on how much time you've got, what your energy level is, etc. And if you're someone who likes flowers, this place is famous among Japanese people for all the alpine flowers, and that's what draws a lot of the locals out here when various volcanic and alpine flowers are blooming. Of course, this mountain is also famous for bears. I personally have never seen a bear on this mountain. I've hiked it dozens of times, but a lot of my friends have spotted bears here, so it is well known for that. So you want to just be aware of that and know how to deal with bears. I carry bear spray. I don't think it's really necessary, but if it makes you feel better, it's not a bad idea to carry bear spray with you. So let me tell you a little bit about these 5 summits that there are here on Akita Komagatake. The first one is the summit that I'm on right now, Meidake. This, in Japanese kanji, is literally Woman Mountain. And it's the most active of the volcanoes. It just erupted in around 1970, 1971. And this one is actually the one that's most likely to erupt again soon. I've actually had dreams before about it erupting, so hopefully it won't erupt today while I'm standing on it right now. There's also Odake, which you can kind of see behind me here. Odake is similarly, instead of just Woman Mountain, it is Man Mountain. And these are a married couple, as there's always these sort of folk tales like that for areas that have a lot of different mountains, and this one is no exception. So they're a couple. And then over there, you can see kind of behind me, that one is Onamedake, which in kanji is Man, Woman, Mountain. And apparently in some classical Japanese, this means courtesan or mistress. And so that is, well, Mistress Mountains. So according to the local folklore, Onamedake, or Mistress Mountain, and Man Mountain were, of course, having an affair, and that is what angered Meidake, where I am now, so she erupts in her frustration and anger. I think it's interesting in Japan that there is that pattern of these love triangles with 2 women and 1 man. I've heard that some of the mountains in the Pacific Ocean, in Hawaii, I think, or was it Polynesia, but in those areas, I've heard it's often 2 men competing for 1 woman when they're talking about volcanoes or mountains. So I guess that's just a difference in their cultures and Japanese culture. The other mountains are this really interesting sort of donut-shaped, donut-looking one called Kodake. And of course, that's the child of the Man and Woman Mountain. There's also Yokodake, which just sort of side mountain, And it's just, I think, sort of a lookout point, and so they named it as a little summit. And then there's Yake Mori, or burned forest, which a lot of people skip it because there's not that much to see there, and you sort of have to just go tap it and then usually backtrack the way you came. But if you wanted to, just for exercise or bragging rights, get all of the main ones, those are the main ones that you can go to. Because usually you can't actually go to Kodake, though, to be honest. That just is something you can see from the other mountain. Unlike Hachimantai, you want to have real hiking boots to come to Akita Komagatake. There is some scrambling involved depending on which route you take. And it's a mountain to respect. Come with caution, make sure you've got the maps, maybe bring a guide. But it's just, as you can see from what I'm showing you here from above, really worth experiencing, really stunning. And while you're in the neighborhood, the Nyuto Hot Springs area is pretty ideal. Anyway, I could just rant and rave for hours about all the reasons why I think this is an excellent place to come. The entire hike today, if you're curious, was 6 hours and 50 minutes. It was a little over 14 kilometers, and the ascent and descent were just over 1,200 meters. And the time is, of course, including flying the drone and relaxing and all that stuff. I hope that you get a chance to visit Akita Komagatake. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.